Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about some health things that I've got going on. So if you are new to my channel, this is a channel where I typically talk about books that I am reading, want to read, have read, but today I'm going to be sharing something a little more personal because sometimes I do share personal stories here on my channel. My last video was my labor and delivery story, and this is a follow-up to that. So the beginning of this story starts after I had my C-section, and that's where things get really crazy when it comes to my labor and delivery experience. So in some of my recent videos, I have kind of mentioned or hinted at the fact that I have some bigger health things going on that I'm dealing with and have been dealing with since the birth of my son, and I am going to tell you about them now. I guess to be not cryptic and to also give a bit of a content or trigger warning, I am going to be talking about brain tumors today and also brain surgery. So if that is something that is triggering or difficult for you to hear about, then you should probably skip this video. So I guess that kind of gives it away that I found out I have a brain tumor and that I need brain surgery, but I'm gonna rewind and tell you about how I found out about that. And like I said, this happened the day that I had my son. Okay, so I ended my last video, my labor and delivery story, with the C-section, and I mentioned that I had a lot of holes in my memory from that day. So I do remember going to the recovery room and having a little bit of bonding time with my son. So apparently what happened in the recovery room was that I started acting very strange. I was staring off into space and people were asking me questions and I would either not respond or respond with things that didn't make sense in the context of their questions. And as I mentioned in my labor and delivery video, I had what we thought was Bell's palsy related to pregnancy, where the right side of my face was kind of paralyzed. And that had actually been progressively getting even worse while I was in the hospital because I was having so much swelling. So with preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome, you have a lot of swelling on top of just your pregnancy swelling. And I hadn't looked in a mirror in days and I didn't realize how bad the swelling was, but it was really bad. Because I was having some neurological symptoms and acting strange in the recovery room, the nurses and the other healthcare providers thought that I might be having a stroke, and they sent me for a CT scan. The CT scan came back as showing something, but it didn't really look like a stroke, and they weren't sure what it was, so they wanted me to have an MRI. But until I could get the MRI, I landed myself in the neuro ICU, which is really scary. I mentioned that I have a lot of holes in my memory. At some point, I remember people telling me that I'd had a CT scan, and I was just like, oh, okay, and kind of acted like it wasn't a big deal. And it wasn't until days later that I realized that I didn't actually remember having the CT scan. It's so weird when you're having a neurological episode where you're not totally there, you feel like you're there. And a lot of people have said that I sounded very present, but I don't remember a lot of the things that happened and a lot of the things that I said. Like my mom said, I kept saying that I saw my husband, and my husband wasn't there where I could see him. He was in another place. And I also remember I told many a doctor that everyone was overreacting. I don't know why you guys are freaking out. This is not a big deal, when obviously it was kind of a big deal. And it wasn't until days later that I realized how big of a deal it was. Anyways, I landed myself in the neuro ICU and I had an MRI that night. And that's when I found out that I have a tumor in my brain, and it has likely been there for a very long time. And we think that it grew quickly during the pregnancy, because if you don't know, pregnancy hormones, not only do they make a baby grow, they make all things grow, including tumors. And that is something that I knew because I know that not often, but that breast cancer can be found during pregnancies because the tumors get bigger during the pregnancy. So, I mean, I don't have breast cancer, but my tumor, it's in my brain, and it is a type of tumor called a meningioma, at least based on what they can see. It's a meningioma, which luckily is a type of tumor that is generally benign. It's not a malignant cancer. So that's really good news. The bad news is that it is really big. I didn't see my MRI for a while, like for weeks after it was done. And I don't know how much to scale the picture that I saw was, but to me, it looks like it's the size of a fist. I don't know how this thing is in my brain and that I'm like so normal. But while I was in the hospital, I was kind of not normal. I had a lot of symptoms in my face. So I mentioned the Bell's palsy. It wasn't Bell's palsy. It was this tumor that had grown very large and was pushing on my facial nerves. But also, there was a lot of swelling going on in my body, and that really exacerbated my symptoms from this tumor. Like I said, my right side of my face was numb, and after delivery, it was also very swollen and pretty much paralyzed. Like my right eye was closed, I couldn't blink it. The right side of my mouth drooped, and I didn't have any control over it. I could barely eat. Like if I was eating, food would just fall out of my mouth. I couldn't drink out of a straw without like holding the right side of my mouth closed. When I was in the hospital, it was so bad, and it was crazy to me how bad things had gotten in just a couple of weeks, mostly since the beginning of the induction, because before I went into the hospital for the induction, I was having some paralysis, but it wasn't really that bad. What was bad was that I was having pain, and that was continuing when I was in the ICU. But yeah, the right side paralysis in my face was really bad after the delivery, and I think a lot of that had to do with the swelling, because once I came home from the hospital over the next 6 weeks, a lot of that has healed, and as you can see now, it's all pretty much normal, and I still have the tumor in my brain. But a lot of the symptoms that I was having are gone. I do still have a little bit of numbness like down here, and my right eye, I don't know what it looks like now, but if I look this way, my right eye wasn't moving as far, and I would have like double vision and stuff, and that actually was a lot worse than it is now. It's gotten a lot better since the delivery. But yeah, basically, after the C-section, I was acting very strange, and I have a lot of holes in my memory from this point. As I mentioned, a CT scan and an MRI showed that I have a large meningioma, and it was causing a lot of the symptoms that I was experiencing in my face, which luckily mostly has resolved by now. But that doesn't change the fact that I have this brain tumor and that I need to have surgery. This was, as you can imagine, a lot to deal with after just having had a baby. It was very unexpected, and I had a very different postpartum experience than what I thought I was going to have. I was in the neuro ICU for 3 or 4 days, separated from my newborn son, which was very difficult. And luckily, for a couple of those days, he was able to come visit me 2 or 3 times for like an hour. So that was really nice. And then for the last 2 or 3 days of my hospital stay, I got moved back to the maternity ward and got to room in with my son. So that was really nice. When I was no longer in critical care, I got moved to another room where I could stay with my son, but I was still in the hospital for a few more days. And then we were all discharged together to come home. So overall, I was in the hospital for about a week, maybe a day more than a week, something like that. Since then, I have been at home and just recovering from the C-section, recovering from the HELP syndrome, and recovering from a lot of the symptoms that I had from this brain tumor and from all the swelling in my body. Like a lot of the symptoms that I had were, I think, related to the swelling, because they're pretty much gone now, but I still have the tumor. So to me, it only makes sense that it's related to the swelling. Emotionally, I've been mostly okay for most of this time since I've been home. At first, we were just in survival mode, just trying to keep this tiny human alive. We're new parents, first-time parents, just trying to figure out how to do all that. Now that I'm 3 months postpartum, I kind of have gotten the hang of that, which is nice, but adding this brain tumor on top of all of that has been really difficult. Emotionally, I've been mostly okay, like I said, but honestly, the closer I get to the surgery, which at the time of filming is happening in less than a week, I've been getting more anxious and more nervous about it. Like I said, the tumor is very large. They are gonna go in like behind my ear, and there's a decent chance I'm gonna completely lose hearing in my right ear. There's really no way to know if any of the nerves are gonna get damaged, like any of my facial nerves. So some of the symptoms that I had before might come back, like the facial drooping and paralysis, eye coordination problems. Some of that might come back. There's just really no telling. But like I said, I'm very lucky in that the type of tumor this is likely benign. We won't know for sure that it's not cancerous, not malignant, until they take it out and do some testing on it and check it, what they call like pathology. But generally speaking, the type of tumor it is benign. So that is really great news. But honestly, I'm still very anxious and nervous about the surgery, as you can imagine. I mean, it's freaking brain surgery. They're gonna cut open my head and take out something that's like this big, which I don't know how I'm so functional with something like that in my head right now. I have been getting more emotional thinking about the surgery. It's going to be a 12 to 14 hour surgery, and then the recovery time period. So they said that right after the surgery and for a month or two, my symptoms will likely get worse. But then long term, one of the surgeons, I have two surgeons, one of them said that I'll be really dizzy afterwards because they have to cut through one of like my ear canals or something, and that it's going to affect my balance and that I'll be really dizzy for a while. But that long term, that should come back. Like I should be able to ride my bike again one day, which I don't really care too much about that. And if I have any like face paralysis or problems with my eyes, my brain is going to heal and the nerves are going to heal. So things are likely going to get worse, and then they should eventually get better, but there's no telling if they're gonna completely heal like 100% and be back to normal. We really don't know what's gonna happen after the surgery. I honestly don't care too much about what happens after the surgery as far as like what sort of symptoms or permanent damage I have. Obviously anything's gonna suck, but all I really care about is that I'm going to survive the surgery because I have a newborn son that I very much want to be around to watch grow up. And obviously I have friends and family that I want to be here with. And I just want to get back to my normal life. I'm so over having this tumor like hanging over my head. They actually moved my surgery date by like a week, and I was really frustrated because not that I'm excited to have surgery, but I want to get this over with and move on with my life. I'm having to take so much time off of work. I had 3 months of a maternity leave, not completely paid, obviously, because I live in the US. And now I'm going to have a couple more months of leave because of this brain tumor. And so that's a lot of time to be off of work. I am lucky that I will be able to go back to work afterwards, but it's just this year has been so weird and crazy. And honestly, this brain tumor thing, it doesn't feel real. It's starting to feel more real now that I'm having surgery next week. But it still kind of feels like something that's happening to somebody else. It especially felt that way when we very first found out. It felt like one of those things that you hear about on the news or that you see like GoFundMe's for. Just, it didn't feel like it was really happening to me, but it is. And I'm not telling you guys all of this because I want you to feel sorry for me or anything like that. One, I just want you to know that if I, or when I disappear from the internet again, it's because of all of this. But also, I just want you to know what's going on in my life and to share my story with the internet in case someone else is going through something similar and they, feel a little less alone. Honestly, the whole thing is crazy. I went to the hospital to give birth to my son and I come home with a brain tumor. Obviously, I had a brain tumor before I went, and I was having symptoms of it before I went to the hospital. We just didn't know that's what was causing those symptoms. And it's also really difficult to think about the fact that a lot of those symptoms that I was having that were very difficult at the end of my pregnancy, like I said, I was having a lot of paralysis and pain in my face. A lot of that has gone away. And then I'm going to have this brain surgery that might bring some of that back, and then hopefully it all goes away again, but you don't know what's going to happen. It's just a very scary thing. Honestly, it's a scary thing that this is going to be a 12 to 14 hour surgery. I'm honestly terrified of this surgery. But I know that I have really good surgeons. I've had multiple people tell me that I'm in good hands, but I do know that this is a very large tumor that is not going to be easy to get out. So anyways, that is my big health update and the thing I've been kind of hinting at in some of my videos where I mentioned that I have some health things going on and that I have a big medical procedure coming up. That is my brain surgery that is happening next week. By the time you see this video, I will have already had the surgery. So I really hope that I will be back on BookTube not too long afterwards, but we really don't know what things are going to be like after the surgery. Anyways, I think I'm going to end the video here. I have no idea if I said the things that I really wanted to say, but I just wanted to let you guys know what's going on with me. I had a baby. That was my labor and delivery video. And then after I had the baby, I had a weird neurological episode that landed me in the neuro ICU, and I found out that I have a likely benign, thank goodness, brain tumor that has to come out, which is very scary. I just really want to survive the surgery so that I can be here with my family afterwards. So, anyways, that's what's going on with me. I have a few more days before I have this surgery, and I'm just trying to enjoy them as much as I can. And I'm going to end this video here. I feel like I've said that 3 times already. If you like this video somehow, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content, because usually I post about books here on this channel. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye.